All right, it's 12 o'clock sharp today. I know everybody has, your time is very important. For my Star Wars fans out there today, may the 4th be with you today. I have Baby Yoda joining us here today. But on a more serious note, this is actually a very important topic. A very important topic that, cyber insurance is something that many of my clients have been coming to me. They've been going through the renewal process if they have cyber insurance and receiving big, scary questionnaires. And if they don't have cyber insurance, they're asking me, is this something that we really need to do? So I brought together a team of experts to help answer all of your questions. I'm very excited to introduce today Justin. Justin Reinmuth is with us today, and he's the CEO and founder of Techrug, which is the technology risk underwriting group. And since 2004, you've been at this for a while, Justin, he and his team have had the responsibility of managing risk and customizing over 18,000 policies in areas such as cyber insurance, of course, management liability insurance, commercial crime, business owners insurance, and then finally workman's compensation. And as a personal note, I met Justin at a cybersecurity conference several years ago, and he is helping us with our cyber insurance, which is really important. And then also he is helping some of my clients as well. And he is one of the few agents in the country that specializes in cyber insurance. And so I'm thrilled you can be with us today, Justin.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, welcome aboard. And then also we have Deborah George. So Deborah is a member of Robinson & Cole's business litigation group, as well as its data privacy and cybersecurity team. So she provides guidance on issues related to cyber insurance policies and also represents clients in litigation matters. Deb helps clients review, revise, and implement the necessary policies and procedures in compliance with. There are a bunch of state and federal laws that business owners need to comply with today. So I've had the honor and the privilege of serving on many panel discussions with Deb George, particularly at the Rhode Island Bar Association. It's always an honor, and I'm glad you could join us today. Thank you so much, Deb.
Thank you, Eric, and I'm looking forward to speaking with all of you today and with Justin and talking about cyber insurance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very important topic, and so I'm glad we're all here. Just a little bit of housekeeping really quick, everybody. Maddie is working in the background. Maddie is helping me out coordinate the webinar and the content, and she will be running the Q&A. So thank you so much, Maddie, for the back end. We really appreciate you being here with us today as well. If there are any questions, I really want this to be an interactive discussion between all of us here. Okay, so if there are any discussions or questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we can answer your questions right along the way. And then also at the end of our discussion, we will save about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A at the end as well. So please, let's make this interactive, and we'll go from there. So does that sound like a good plan, everybody? Great. Awesome. All right. So let's get started. Okay. So we will have a little bit of a roundtable discussion, and let's start off with Justin. So Justin, one of the big things that I hear all the time from my clients, Eric, do I really need cyber insurance? Is that something that I really need to have? Is it worth, spending the money? So Justin, why does a company need cyber insurance?
Yeah, so my answer always to that is, tomorrow morning, unplug your network at 8 o'clock in the morning and plug it back in at 5 and tell me how your day goes, right? Cyber insurance, anyone that's connected to the internet, especially with all the cloud-based applications that we utilize, whether it's Microsoft email or your management system, while it's super convenient, right? There's also some dangers, and if vulnerabilities are exposed, it can shut down your business pretty quick. So, a cyber liability insurance policy is usually going to help out an organization in one of three areas. The first one is going to be, we have a lot of folks that will focus on, the sensitive information, right? PHI or PII. So when I say PHI, that's protected health information. When I say PII, that's personally identifiable information. So, organizations that, will have medical records, or they'll have social security numbers or driver's license. Every state in the union has, laws that you have to comply with if that information is disclosed and it's to an unauthorized access party. So, a lot of clients want to make sure that, if that does happen, that they've got some, available funds for, notification and forensics and regulatory fines and penalties and, credit monitoring that has to go on. The second reason usually a client wants to take out a cyber liability policy is, it's something to do and centered around a ransomware attack. There was last year, I'm sure these statistics change all the time, but 4 months ago, I was reading one where there was a ransomware attack. And now this is globally every 14 seconds. So, I can guarantee you there weren't a house fire every 14 seconds. So, making sure that you have a cyber insurance policy, if there is a ransomware attack, the bad actors are going to be looking for some sort of payment in the form of digital currency. And it's not like you can just go down to the bank and do that. It's a rather, it's a pain in the you-know-what to get that done if you don't have anything set up. And then, with that also comes, when you're locked up, business interruption claims. There could be data that needs to be restored. Again, there could be forensics. You have to investigate, was anything compromised? So kind of that middle group really focuses on the ransomware attack. And then Eric, the last group and why they often will tell us why they want to get a cyber policy is usually centered around some sort of business email compromise or cyber crime event. So they know somebody that's been, tricked into sending money to someone they shouldn't have. We call it social engineering. Or there could have been a business email compromise where these bad actors take over your email and they'll let you see the emails that you want to see. And then any emails that have to do with payments or something centered around that, they are directing those to them. And then they're, obviously saying, hey, our banking routing and account information's changed, or, hey, I'm about ready to send you something. Can you tell me the MFA code that you get on your phone? So there's a lot of that going on. So, again, that's why a company will come to us is usually for the PHI, the PII, something centered around a ransomware attack or a cyber crime event.
Yeah, that's something that the business email compromise, Justin, is something that at Secure Future Tech, we are seeing a tremendous amount of. As a matter of fact, just last week, we brought on a new client to help them out with a situation where their email was compromised and hackers emailed one of their clients and they redirected and paid a $54,000 invoice to hackers, and that money was gone. So this is a small business. They can't afford that loss. That is a very challenging thing that's happening, and all those other things that you mentioned too, Justin, the ransomware on a local level, we are seeing that. So Deb, let's say a company does get hit, and I have to share a little secret with all of you. I feel it's my obligation to tell you this. Even though, despite our best efforts, and we are protecting our clients with the latest and greatest cybersecurity solutions, unfortunately, breaches still occur because humans are involved, mistakes happen. And so if a company doesn't have cyber insurance, what happens, Deb?
Well, so some of the things that Justin mentioned, there are costs associated with that. So, for example, typically one of the first steps is to figure out, well, exactly what happened. So the company will have to hire a forensics specialist, a forensic company, and they will go through and figure out what data was accessed by the threat actor, what type of data it is. Justin mentioned PHI, PII, was it social security numbers, was it medical information? You need to know what data was accessed by the threat actor. And then you also need to know whose data it was. And so all of that comes with a forensic evaluation. So that's probably one of the first things that's going to happen. And
that sounds very expensive.
One of the first expenses. That's what I was just going to say. Depending upon the scope of the unauthorized access, forensic evaluations can cost in many thousands of dollars. We've seen some pretty hefty price tags on those. The next thing is, there's 50 different state laws to determine breach notification requirements. So we've all received those letters, right? Your data has been accessed, and then the letter's usually about a couple of pages, and it will explain to you a brief, explanation of what happened, and it will give you credit information for the 3 credit reporting companies and offer credit monitoring services. So those letters are written by typically lawyers like me, and that's another cost. So the next cost will be legal costs. So we'll have to determine, we'll look at the forensic analysis, and we'll have to determine whose data was accessed, where do they live, and what are the notification requirements. So for example, in Rhode Island, if the breach affects more than 500 people, not only do we have to notify the individuals, we also have to notify the attorneys general. And those requirements are typically different in all 50 states. So we have to look at whose data was accessed, where do they live, what are the notification requirements. If it includes medical information, there may be notification to the Office of Civil Rights, and setting up credit monitoring. So offering that, there's a cost to the business to pay for that credit monitoring. Notifications, credit monitoring, forensic evaluation, legal fees. If there's credit card data involved, there may be notifications to merchants as far as that goes. Communications costs. You may have to hire somebody to manage this breach. The company may lose business. You want to manage the negative information that comes out. So crisis management is also an expense. And then loss of use. So if you can't use your data, if you can't access your phone system, if you can't access your computer system, all of those costs add up. And every day that you are down means a loss of business. So the incident response costs can be very great right off the bat, Eric, if a company has a breach.
Oh, and that's been our experience. We've seen that happen time and time again, where the costs are astronomical. Even the ransoms. 10 years ago, when ransomware started becoming popular with cyber criminals, the ransom was $300, $500. Now we're seeing ransoms $300,000, $500,000, and depending on the organization, they give, the ransom, the hackers could be asking for millions. I mean, so it's the costs have gone up significantly. But I have a question for you. So let's say I don't have a separate cyber insurance policy, and Justin and Deb, you can both comment on this. I don't have a separate policy, but I carry all kinds of other insurance. I have a general liability insurance. I have E&O insurance. Isn't any of this stuff covered under those policies?
Yeah, I'll let Deb go if she wants to go first.
All right. So what I like to say about that, Eric, is sometimes that's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So a commercial general liability policy or D&O policy, those policies cover a lot of things, but they may not very well cover a cyber incident. And in fact, if a client said to me, well, can I just rely on one of those policies? I would say, talk to your broker. I'm not reading your policy right this minute, but my gut is no, that those policies are likely not going to cover it, especially when you get into things like social engineering, which of course describes the email compromise that you both touched on earlier, where somebody clicks on a link in an email, and next thing you know, the threat actor gets into the company's email system and sends that email to all the vendors and results in one of your clients or customers sending a payment to a fraudulent bank account. Those kinds of things are typically worded very carefully in insurance policies and probably would likely not be covered in a traditional CGL policy. The other thing too is ransomware. Ransomware is typically something that is specifically mentioned in a policy, and you can't assume that ransomware either would be covered. And speaking of ransomware statistics, I did come across something it was in the ConnectWise 2022 MSP threat report. which said that MSPs are a target of ransomware. And there's been a significant increase in attacks in the second half of 2021. 72% of ransomware incidents directly targeted MSPs. I mean, that's a pretty scary thought to think that, you know, they're actually even targeting this type of business. So,
well, I have to say, Deb, that's something that keeps me up at night. And that is one of the reasons why at Secure Future Tech over the last 2 years, we've been enhancing our security and our own internal controls. And then also we work with Justin to increase our own cyber insurance and work with his risk management team to help us out to make, you know, Secure Future Tech as secure as possible. Because if you think about it, if I'm a hacker and I can target just one small business somewhere, that's all I can work with, that one business. But if I can target a managed services provider, such as Secure Future Tech, and they work with hundreds of clients, I've hit the mother lode. I've hit payday right there. So that's something, I think it's a really important discussion too, that any kind of IT provider that you're working with, I think you want to have questions for them as well. What are they doing for their internal controls? How much insurance do they have? That's a very valid question. And sometimes smaller service providers can't afford the coverage, or they don't have it or whatever. And while their price may look attractive, that's not going to be the case if you get compromised. So that's a very good point. And thank you for bringing that up, Deborah. Justin, do you have any questions or comments regarding?
Just to piggyback on, you know, what Deb was saying is that, you know, a business insurance policy might include, you know, a sublimit, which means, you know, it's not the limit of the GL policy. So if you've got 1 million per occurrence and 2 million aggregate, they may offer you, you know, 10, 15, 20, maybe even $50,000 of cyber insurance. Most of the times what those policies are looking at is they're really looking at the theft or disclosure of PHI or PII, which, you know, while that's important, I mean, that's really so 2015, you know what I mean, in terms of the attackers now, they're really after this, you know, for the ransom, you know, it's kidnap and ransom insurance. It's, I've got your data, how much are you going to give me? And they're really looking at the business email compromise. I mean, even when we have forensics go through on these breaches, you know, they rarely ever, you know, do anything with the PHI or PII. You know, we're now starting to see games where, you know, because the technology is getting so good in terms of backups and things like that, that now they're going to the actual, let's just pick a medical practice. They'll actually go to the patients and they'll email them because they got their email address and say, hey, here's the last 6 digits of your social security number. And then the patient will say, well, how do you have that? And then they'll say, well, you might want to ask, you know, XYZ chiropractor. You know, so what they're doing now is they're shaming the business into paying the ransom. That's kind of the new thing we've seen as the technology continues to improve. So, you know, that's just, again, what we've seen on our end. It's a little disturbing, but, you know, what are you going to do?
That's definitely something that we have seen happen to some of our clients here. You know, it's a very serious situation. And a lot of times you don't read about this in the news because a lot of the smaller attacks that are happening are to privately held businesses. And that's not something that we want to, as business owners, that's not something we want to advertise to our clients or to anyone. So that's a very real threat. So Justin, I have another question for you. So if I have a general liability insurance policy, why can't I just add a rider to that policy that includes cyber?
Yeah, the limits aren't going to be high enough and it's not going to be broad. So a standalone cyber policy, you know, obviously is going to probably start at a minimum of $1 million limits, you know, and it's going to include things, you know, like, you know, network security and privacy liability and cyber extortion. I don't want to rattle them off, but there's other unique coverages that you might not think of, like voluntary shutdown, where if somebody's in your system and we've got to shut you down, the carrier will actually pay for the downtime. You know, there's invoice manipulation. If an invoice gets manipulated and somebody pays based off that manipulated invoice, you know, a GL policy isn't going to have it. You know, plus, honestly, Eric, a lot of these standalone policies now are getting, you know, they're doing external surface scans and monitoring from the outside. So they're monitoring the production environment, but they're monitoring the outside of where attackers might be looking. So you've got an extra set of eyes on it. Plus, you know, there's a lot of stuff that these, you know, the really good cyber carriers are doing in terms of, you know, maybe incident response plan templates, you know, so there's just a lot of perks to it. So again, whether it's a general liability policy or whether it's even, you know, me as an insurance agent, I can add it onto my insurance agent E&O, and it's not very comprehensive. So, you know, I would just buy a standalone cyber policy and make sure that it's got a good policy. Is probably going to have 15 to 20 good insuring agreements. When I insuring agreements, those are coverages that if things go wrong that would have to trigger. So that's the route I would go.
Got it. Okay. So we have a question that came in regarding ransomware. Isn't the biggest threat just to lock up the individual computers or phones that are used to access a third-party site? So I think this person is talking about, they use a cloud system to run their business. So what are the threats there if the cloud provider gets compromised or the individual machines get compromised? I could throw this out to both of you.
Deb, you want me to go first, or you?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, no, I mean, a cloud provider, a lot of times you got to make sure and go through these policies. Does the policy cover data that's held by a third party? That's extremely important. Some carriers might not, give you, that coverage. So, making sure that you've got coverage for that is extremely, extremely important. If you do have coverage for it, then that's the importance of having a cyber policy, right? If there's some downtime, because listen, getting Microsoft or Google to change their terms and conditions for your business, it just isn't going to happen, right? So they've limited their liability to $1,000 or whatever it may be. So that's the importance of having that cyber policy. If there is downtime, you're able to use that. The other thing you got to pay attention to, a lot of these policies are changing, especially with everything that's going on in, Eastern Europe, they're changing the definition of war. Pay attention to that, The other thing is we're starting to see a lot of co-insurance when it comes to ransomware. What co-insurance means, we had one today where a client had submitted, asked us to look at a policy, to get their client a quote. And it was, I don't know, a $40 million company. The premium was like, I don't know, it was like $30-something thousand. But my point is they were carrying, $5 million limits. Okay. Now the cyber extortion had a 5% co-insurance. Okay. So when you started doing the math on what that would be if they were hit with a ransomware, because it was 2.5, was what they were sublimating. The main policy was 5 million, but they were sublimating the cyber extortion to 2.5 million. Well, 5% of 2.5 million is what, $125,000 or 150 something worth. So that means that organization, if they take out that policy and there's a ransomware attack and it's $2 million, that organization has to pay that 125 or 150,000. That's a lot of money. Beware of the co-insurance. A lot of carriers now are putting co-insurance.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So be careful of the co-insurance. I would try to stay away from a policy that charges co-insurance. But going back to the cloud thing, I think the biggest thing is just making sure that your insurance policy has coverage for data of yours that is held by a third party.
So Deb, if you're a business and you're relying on, let's say, Microsoft or Salesforce or a cloud provider, and something happens where they get compromised, but your client information ends up getting out, is there any recourse there? I mean, what can you do from a legal point of view?
Well, I think Justin's correct in saying, if you go on Microsoft's website and read their terms of service or any of those other sort of big companies, you'll see limits of liability. You'll see language where they basically try to limit their liability. I do agree with what Justin said, though, in terms of making sure you understand what your cyber policy covers. And that's the key is having, whether it's your broker, your agent, you've got to marry what your type of business it is, what kinds of data you handle, whether you use third parties for that data storage or companies like the ones you mentioned. And then look at not only what your business does, but what the policy offers, because it's not going to do you any good to have a cyber policy only to find out you don't have coverage, especially for something you thought you might have coverage for. So it's while it might not be feasible to go after Salesforce, you might also be able to, or some other company, I don't want to pick on them, you might also want to look at what your policy covers, because there may be some coverage there, depending upon the language of the policy.
Great. So it sounds to me like even though I have my data in the cloud and it's with Microsoft or Google or any other number of provider, it's still important for me to have cyber insurance in place with third-party coverage. So I think that's a very good question that we had that came in from the audience. So
Eric, there's one thing I want to talk about, though, just quickly with ransomware, because ransomware sometimes isn't necessarily just pay us this, X amount of Bitcoin. It's if you don't pay us, we will release your data on the dark web. And so it's this combination of, not only are we holding your data hostage, so okay, if your data is in the cloud, that might not be an issue, but if the threat actor is going to release it to the dark web, that's another matter altogether. And that's really what we're seeing a lot of right now. It's not just the data is being held up, it's the data is not only going to be held up, but released to the dark web.
And that's something, unfortunately, we have experienced with some of our clients as well. That seems to be the blackmail component seems to be a bigger part of, cybercrime these days, not just keeping you from your data, but threatening to release it or email your clients. And unfortunately, we had a situation last year where some of that happened. So that's something that, we definitely have to be aware of. So I want to get back a little bit more so let's say you've made the decision, you want to get cyber insurance for your business. So Justin, this question is for you. So what are the implications of having or not having certain cybersecurity measures in place? To give you an example, we work with our clients to make sure that we are protecting their email. And one of the key ways of doing that is by implementing something that's called multi-factor authentication, where a username and a password is not enough to get in. You also need a code that's sent to your phone, or you can use an authenticator app, which gives you a rolling code that changes every 60 seconds. Also firewalls and EDR, which is an advanced antivirus protection system. So if I don't have any of these systems in place and I go to apply for cyber insurance, like what's the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to get coverage. It used to be 3 and 4 years ago, you could get away with it. The cyber industry now is getting nailed in terms of what they call their loss ratio. So for every dollar they collect, they're paying out $2. So they've got to stop it. So a lot of the carriers, what they've done is, even a year ago, they probably would say, hey, if you don't have MFA, if you don't have EDR, if you don't have 321 segregated backups, if you don't have phishing training, well, then we're just going to debit your policy. And so instead of spending $2,000, we're now going to charge you $10,000. But that didn't work, because they couldn't collect enough $10,000. So, now they're pretty much, a lot of the carriers are just saying, again, the good ones that are going to give you solid coverage, that are going to stand behind the policy, you either do it or you don't get the coverage. So a lot of times, some of the smaller organizations, things that they might think, are advanced, like you said, EDR, but probably a lot of people aren't really that familiar with it. But, a year or 2 years ago, that was considered advanced. That's just standard now, So, there's really probably, 9 security protocols that the carriers are looking for you to have. And again, it varies to carrier to carrier. It's not like with Deb and I, I've got to comply with the Department of Insurance. She's got to, comply with the bar. There are standards out there, for these organizations to follow. But and that's one part of the equation. But the other part is the standards that the individual insurance companies are setting in order for you to achieve a policy. So it's not going to be as high as the standards of like CMMC, NIST, ISO, COVID, something like that. But they are going to be the insurance company standards. And again, if you just don't do it, prices are already going up quite a bit, 50 to 100%. Sometimes we've seen, clients or prospects before they come to us where they're going up 2.5 to 4x, So, prices are definitely going up, but you got to have security. I mean, it's a holistic approach to it. You can't just rely on insurance and you can't just rely on security. You've got to rely on both.
Yeah, I concur. I think you have to have both, and that's really an important component. So Deb, as part of what I do as an IT manager for my clients, many of them have been bringing to me, particularly this year, very big, long, scary, 2 and 3 page questionnaires. Do you have a firewall? Do you have EDR? Do you have multiple multi-factor authentication? And so we've been helping our clients fill those out openly and honestly. But my concern would be, what if a client, and maybe they don't really know, and they fill something out incorrectly, and they say they have something, but they don't, and then a claim happens? What's the recourse there? What goes on from a legal point of view? Does the insurance company have to pay the claim, or can they deny it?
Well, I think we're very new to this part of the cyber insurance world. I've only just started to see those questionnaires in the last year or two as well. And we've worked with clients, same as you, Eric, in terms of, it's kind of a team effort. You want your IT provider to look at the questionnaire and answer the technical questions. And then, we've worked with our clients to answer some other questions. Sometimes the insurance company is looking for things like, do you do annual employee training? Believe it or not, employee training is one of the key things. You can have the best cybersecurity in the world, but if your employee clicks on a link in an email, it could go very south very quickly, even with the best cybersecurity in place. So answering those questions truthfully, no matter what you do in life, if you don't answer truthfully, there's always consequences, right?
Right.
So would a company face potentially a denial in coverage down the road if they were not truthful in that questionnaire? I have not seen a case yet with that, but I think that certainly would give the insurance company something to look at very carefully. There's a reason why they're asking you these questions. And so that's one of the ways they assess risk. It's one of the ways they use to underwrite. And so, if someone is not truthful in that questionnaire, that's going to impact everything down the road. It'll have a ripple effect. Do I think it could lead to a denial in coverage? Yeah, I do. Now there's a difference between somebody who's intentionally being sort of fraudulent about answering the question and somebody who maybe just doesn't understand. If the questions are such that they're so technical, or they talk about legal issues, things that you really, it's outside your wheelhouse, then by all means consult with your IT experts, your legal counsel, your broker, your agent, and find out what the questions are really about to make sure that you have the best information to be able to answer them.
Thank you, Deb. And Justin, what's been your experience with the questionnaires, and have you seen any claims denied from someone that maybe didn't fill out the questionnaire correctly?
Yeah, I think sometimes, like Deb said, the individual business might not understand, the technology questions, so they might think that they have it. I would say, again, oftentimes people think that insurance companies just constantly want to deny claims. And again, I would point you to Google cyber insurance, in claims, right? You'll see, you can read online that the carriers are losing their shirt. So these are really broad coverage. But yeah, if you're going to check things like, yes, we've got an MFA, multi-factor on email and all remote access, and you don't, it'll probably be grounds for a denial because they wouldn't have offered the policy under had they known. So again, sometimes the organizations don't really understand and they think, oh yeah, I've got it. They don't check with, their IT service provider, and that kind of what gets them in trouble. So yeah, I'd be very cautious on how you answer those questions, and, even put comments, right? Maybe if you think the question is a little bit vague, just say, we're answering this question, yes, based on MFA being this, this, and this, right? So, just give them that, because then it's their, obligation to push back to you to get more information, because you've told them how you're defining MFA, not how they're defining MFA.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, I think it's really important to engage with your IT provider, engage with your attorney to help you fill those out. And that's something that, much to the credit of many of my amazing clients, they've been coming to me with these, and we've been working on an awful lot of questionnaires to make sure they're correct. And if there are any gaps, working with them to improve their security so that they can get coverage at a reasonable price. So I think that's really important. So let's say, Deb, a breach does happen and something is going on. Can you kind of walk us through, what do I do next?
Right. Well, I touched on this a little earlier as far as starting with the forensic evaluation, figuring out what happened, figuring out what's affected, who's affected, and walking through. Basically, we work with our clients who've had a breach to comply with legal requirements, regulatory requirements, and notice requirements, all of the things that have, all of the steps that have to take place that the company is responsible for. So in Rhode Island, for example, the statute says that if you're a company that possesses the personal information and there's a breach, then you have these notice requirements. So the burden is on the company to do this. And so that's what we do, is we assist our clients with drafting those notification letters, notifying regulators, notifying the FBI or law enforcement if that's necessary, and setting up the credit monitoring, working with the call center. And I just want to say too, that if there is a breach, and let's say you have insurance and your carrier might already have a whole incident response team that you would work with. And that's all set up, and there's a law firm in place, there's a forensic company in place. Other policies we've seen allow, let's say you have your forensic company, or you have your IT provider, or you have legal counsel, and the other policies will allow you to request approval to use your own legal counsel, to use your own IT provider. And so you have to also look at what the policy language is to see if you have that flexibility, or if the policy is going to require you to use the companies that they have already contracted with. But at any rate, what happens is we have to walk the client through all of these various steps in the process and determine, how we're going to set up the call center. Do we need to provide credit monitoring? Every state has a different amount, 2 years in Connecticut, 18 months in Massachusetts. So again, depending upon where your customers are, or it could be your own employees whose information was breached. If they're a resident of Maine or Mississippi or Montana, we need to know, we as lawyers will look up what are the requirements for those states, and then we have to follow them. And so the company is responsible for complying with all of those requirements once there is a breach. And really things add up very, very quickly. Legal fees can be in the thousands of dollars in terms of this regulatory defense and things that these notification requirements. Credit monitoring has a cost associated with it. A call center has a cost associated with it. Forensic evaluations, all of these things can be in the thousands of dollars. And so you really want to know, what does your policy cover? What expenses are covered? What are the limits on that coverage? What's your deductible or retention amount that you have to pay before the insurance company will pay anything out? So there's a lot that happens when we counsel our clients when there is a breach like that.
I think that's a very good point, Deb, because you're not only buying the insurance coverage, but you're buying the team that comes with it because of all the components that you mentioned. And if there is a breach and you have to report to many jurisdictions across the country, you don't want to have to scramble to find somebody. So if you have a decent cyber policy in place, Justin, maybe you can comment a little bit more about that. Like, how does that all come together? Like, who do you call first? And then what does the insurance company do from there? Yeah,
I mean, the insurance policy is a built-in incident response plan. So, they've teamed up, they call them panelists, but there's, law firms such as Deb's, there's forensics, there's PR people. So I got to tell you that the carriers over the last several years have gotten really good at incident response. So, you just need to initiate, the claim process with the particular carrier. All the policies will have either an 800 number or an email. It's monitored 24/7. And again, somebody will be on the phone or getting a hold of you within hours. So they're usually pretty quick to act, especially if it's a ransomware attack. I always warn clients that the beginning goes really fast. A lot of stuff's going on because we want to free up the data. But then when it comes to like the business interruption and that sort of stuff, that's where we kind of get really clogged up, and it takes time to just go through that. Because there's certain things that some of the policyholders don't understand, like it's not going to cover overtime for employees if they have to do things, so, a lot of times I feel like, using a home analogy, if God forbid your house burns, the insured, i.e. the client of this policy, when they go to rebuild the house, they want crown molding, but they didn't have crown molding before the house, in the house before it was burned. So, I think sometimes the expectation of what these policies and what some of the insureds want them to do goes above and beyond what the policy is actually meant to do. It's meant to get you to a point to where you were before the time of the loss, right? It's not to better you. It's not to put you in a better position, because that would be incentivizing you in what we call moral hazard. For the most part, like I said, these policies are going to be very broad. If something happens, you want to get a hold of somebody ASAP, and then let the insurance carrier take you through that process, because they're going to have vendors that they've worked with for years and years and years. They're going to help you in the various aspects of the claim.
Thank you, Justin. And your first call to be, I'm going to do a shameless plug here. Your first call needs to be to your IT provider, so that they can take immediate action to stop whatever kind of threat is happening. And then next up, the insurance company. So I think it's really important. Speed is the key here when dealing with cybersecurity incidents. And so you want to get your IT provider involved as soon as possible. We had a situation last year where something happened on a Sunday and we got on it right away. That's not something that can wait till Monday morning, and then get your insurance company involved to bring all those resources available to help you. I do have a question from John. Hey, John. John is a great client of mine for many years. And he says, do you have recommendations for what specific types of coverage is needed and the limits that you need? So, Justin, you want to tackle that one?
Since John's such a great client, I'll send it to you after and you can send it to him. We've got a PDF that has like 17, 18 insuring agreements that you want to pay attention to.
Oh, wonderful.
In terms of the limits, John, I mean, anyone that tells you they know exactly what the limits are, they're just lying to you. What do I mean by that? Is a ransom going to be $2 million, or is it going to be 200,000? Because I've seen it both. Is when we have to pay for the decryption key to test it before we buy the other decryption key, is the decryption key going to work the first time, or is it going to not? Because I've seen it both. When we do pay for the decryption key, are 30% of the keys going to work, or 80% of the keys? Because I've seen it both, right? And then when we do get it, how much data was encrypted? Was it a terabyte or was it 2 terabytes? Again, 2 terabytes is going to take longer than 1 terabyte. So, the whole thing in terms of what limits, honestly, it's a guessing game. If we were just looking at one aspect and saying, hey, we've got 1,000, records, and if we have to notify people, that's a little bit easier to come to a limit, in terms of what's right for your organization. But when you're talking about ransomware attacks, and that leads into business interruption, and it leads into forensics and all that sort of stuff, it's just impossible.
One thing I would add to that is you've got to look at what type of business you have. What are your risks? I mentioned this earlier. If you handle credit card data, if you handle medical data, some of those kinds of things are higher risk. And so that could factor into, those limits. If you are signing agreements with third parties, sometimes those agreements might have requirements for cyber coverage. So you might want to think about that. Well, gee, did I sign a contract with a vendor and promise to have $1 million of cyber liability coverage? So that's something else to consider. But really, it's hard to say what coverage someone needs without looking at what type of business it is. What are the risks? What do you have the most high risk data? What needs to be protected? And what is it you're looking to insure against? Do you want coverage for those? Typically, the incident response costs are usually something that's covered in a good cyber policy. Social engineering sometimes comes as I've seen it both in the policy and as a rider. That's something to consider. Ransomware is something to be really considered very strongly. When you're looking at regulatory coverage, first and third party coverage, that's also something to think about. We touched on it a little bit earlier. If your data is being held by a third party, but third party coverage really talks about if you get sued by others. And so that's something. So your first party expenses are going to be your expenses, but third party is if you get sued by others because of the data breach. So that's something to also consider. You know, we typically work with clients with a questionnaire that's, you know, literally things to ask your broker. So, you know, that's something that we would offer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Justin, I know that you offered up a PDF with 17 things to look at. Is that something we can share with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me, Eric, so I don't forget, I just sent it to you. So you've got it.
Wonderful. Anyone that has registered and is on the webinar today, I will make sure that you get a copy of that. So thank you so much. So we're kind of winding down on time a little bit. We do have time for a couple more questions from the audience. And then Justin and Deb, you know, parting thoughts. So if you guys want to start there, we're waiting for a couple more questions.
Yeah,
I'll let Deb go first if she wants.
Sure. So one of the things that I want to emphasize is, you know, I think, Eric, when you put this out on social media, you mentioned that the average cost of a data breach in 2021 was $4.24 million. That's a boatload of money to think about. And, you know, threat actors, what we're seeing is it isn't just big companies they're going after. They're sometimes going after smaller companies because they figure that the smaller companies are going to be more likely to pay up to make it go away. And they're very crafty about what they do. So the average amount of time for, and this is from the most recent IBM Ponemon report, the average number of days to identify and contain a breach is 287 days. So that means that if the threat actor gets into your system on January 1st, you will not be cleared of that, meaning identifying and containing that breach until October 14th. And if you think about all the bad things that can happen during that time, whether it's lost productivity, not being able to access your data, having to restore your data, loss of reputation in the community, having to pay to have your data restored. I mean, there's so many different things that can really be so cost prohibitive. So even though a cyber policy might be, you know, whatever it is in cost, $10,000 a year, you know, the costs of a data breach are so much more that it could literally put a company out of business. And so that's one of the reasons why I feel so strongly personally that cyber insurance really is important, that you know, it's a threat that is not going to go away, and they're really only getting worse in terms of being creative. So it isn't just we're going to ransom you for money, we're going to put your data out on the dark web. And no one really likes getting those letters that say, you know, that their social security number has been compromised. I mean, I personally just got a notice when we went to file our taxes that my social security number had been used by somebody claiming my number as a dependent. And so I was unable to file my return electronically. That nobody wants that. That is just not a good situation, you know? So, you know, it's really, really important. If you hold people's personal information, if you hold their medical information, you've got to protect it. And, you know, having this coverage will really help in terms of if there is a breach or security incident down the road.
Thank you, Deb. And I think you brought up a very interesting point. It takes 280 days. And I have to say, I want to add to that too, because hackers don't typically just hack into your system on day one and then commit a crime. They typically are in your system anywhere from 3 to 6 months, gathering intelligence, gathering passwords, putting in backdoors into your system to be able to get back in. So this is something that happens over a series of months, and it can take, as Deb mentioned, a long time to remedy. So Justin, final words.
Yeah, I just think everyone on this call needs to remember that, you know, the folks on the other side, these bad actors, they're looking at vulnerabilities. So we hear so many times like, oh, I'm a 5-person accounting firm, I'm a 15-person law firm. We don't need cyber insurance. They don't care. They're just looking for vulnerabilities. It's like as a kid, right? If you throw out a fishing net into the ocean, there's bound to be a fish that'll swim through. So, if you aren't keeping up with security or patching things, and that's why it's so important to work with a good MSP such as Eric, is that, if those vulnerabilities are exposed, they're going to nail you, right? And so it's just the bigger the company, the more they're probably going to ask for. The smaller companies, they're probably not going to ask for as much. I just go back to my original thing that there is no silver bullet out there. But if you're following a standard, that's laid out to you by the MSP, whether it's CMMC, NIST, ISO, COBATE, and you get an insurance policy, while the threat doesn't completely go away, it reduces and it diminishes it quite a bit. So I think, again, you got to pay attention to security. You got to get a comprehensive standalone cyber policy. And I think if you do those two things, the loss, if it gets to that point, it'll be mitigated and it won't be as severe and as bad as you think.
Justin, we have another really great question that came in. Does hiring an MSP like Secure Future Tech help lower your security premium? So if we put all the things in place that are needed, does that give us a better rate on our cyber policy?
Yeah, so I think that, as I mentioned earlier, kind of in there, it used to be where a lot of these carriers would say, well, if you do, or if you don't have EDR, you don't have MFA, or you don't have these certain things, your premium is going to go from, I remember 2 years ago, we worked with, it was an older folks home in Michigan, and they didn't have like MFA, and the premium went from like 3,000 to 10,000. Well, then the renewal this year came and they still have the MFA, and the carrier said, we're not going to offer you terms, So I just think with the number of losses that the carriers are experiencing right now in the loss ratio, unfortunately, it's you do as we say or you don't get the coverage. So there's really not going to be a discount. But I think a lot of the folks on this call, are probably going to actually have to spend more in security to achieve that policy this year than they did last year.
Thank you, Justin. So our time is running out. What a great conversation today. I really want to thank Deb and Justin for joining us today and giving us some really important information. This is something that you don't want to overlook for your business. We can put all the security in place, and the security is important, but unfortunately things do happen, and that's why we need to rely on cyber insurance to help protect us just in case. If you need to reach out to any of us, I have a slide up there. Please take a snapshot or a photo of this. We can also make sure that you get the slides as well. So anyone that's attended today will send the slides out. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any insurance questions, legal questions, or of course, if you need any help with your IT network to secure it. We're happy to help at Secure Future Tech. And my final slide here, we are giving free network security assessments to anyone that has attended today. So if you are interested, please go to securefuturetech.com/free-network-assessment. Maddie, thank you for putting the link in the chat to make it easier for everybody. So click on that link, sign up, and I'll give you a call and we'll schedule time to take a look at your cybersecurity and see what's going on. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'll get you out of here with a couple minutes left so that you can go back to your day. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.